The day I discovered my wife had been unfaithful was one of the most devastating moments of my life. And it happened on the very same day she was admitted to the hospital. Even now, years later, she struggles to accept that I'm engaged to someone else. There were an award for the most painful way to find out your partner had cheated. I'd be a top contender. Like many others in this unfortunate corner of the internet, I never imagined I'd end up in this situation. What lingers the most is the tone in my ex-sister-in-law's voice when she called. She kept saying, "I'm sorry. So sorry." And I couldn't make sense of. I had just returned from a week-long work trip and was exhausted and disoriented. She was clearly shaken, but only after calming her down did I get a partial explanation. My wife had been hospitalized and I needed to get there as soon as possible. She said it was due to some kind of assault, then abruptly hung up and ignored all my follow-up calls. Driving to the hospital, I tried to focus on the road while my mind raced. She had given me almost no details, just that something awful had occurred. Understand it all, you need to know a bit about our past. Met my ex-wife in our mid-20s at a barbecue hosted by a mutual friend. She was stunning, almost unreal in how quietly beautiful she was. She had a gentle, introverted nature that made her stand. Took some time before we started dating officially, but once we did, I felt like I had won the jackpot. First attempt at intimacy ended with her in tears. At the time I panicked, thinking I had done something wrong. The next day she explained that she had experienced trauma in a previous relationship. She'd been in a long-term abusive relationship, emotionally, physically, and mentally draining. Memories of that time had left deep scars, and intimacy sometimes triggered those wounds. She assured me it wasn't about me, and I trusted her. We went slowly, and she continued therapy. It wasn't easy, but I loved her and believed that working through this together would bring us closer. A year later I proposed. Had just bought a house using an inheritance from my late uncle, and everything seemed to be falling into place. We were hopeful, even planting a peach tree in the yard to symbolize a fresh start. We married shortly after, and for a while I thought we were truly happy. Of course, we had our challenges. No marriage is perfect, but we made it a point never to go to bed angry, and she always tried to express concerns gently. Then life shifted. I got a promotion that brought more money but also required more travel. Around that time I noticed change in her. She became more withdrawn, less interested in intimacy, and secretive with her phone. She started spending more nights at her sister's house, claiming she needed girl time. Expressed my concerns, but she dismissed them, saying she was just going through a rough period. Chose to trust her. The day everything fell apart, had said she'd be spending the night with her sister again. Then came that phone call. I rushed to the hospital, frantic and confused, asking anyone about my wife. Eventually, a police officer, a friend of her sister, pulled me aside. He explained he had responded to a domestic violence call. When he arrived, a man was on top of a woman, striking her as he screamed. I couldn't believe it. It couldn't possibly involve my wife. She was married to me. She would never be in that situation. But the officer's calm tone and serious expression said otherwise. He told me the woman was in fact my wife. Couldn't even react. I was too shocked. A nurse led me into her room, and what I saw will never leave me. She was almost unrecognizable, her face bruised and swollen. I shut completely. Her jaw fractured, ribs broken. Then the doctor gave me Another shock. She was pregnant. Felt the world crumble around me. Nothing made sense. I couldn't understand how any of this had happened. Her sister was there too, avoiding my gaze. The officer urged her to tell me the truth. Tearfully, she admitted that my wife's ex, the man who had abused her, had contacted her about 5 months earlier. He claimed he wanted to make amends for his past. Somehow, he persuaded her to meet for coffee. That meeting turned into an emotional affair which eventually became physical. Her sister kept apologizing, saying she had no idea about the prior abuse. My wife had never told anyone but me and her therapist. I stood there completely couldn't think, couldn't speak. When my wife woke and saw me, she collapsed in tears. The months that followed felt like walking through a nightmare. Went to therapy. We attended joint counseling at her family's urging. In those sessions, she opened up in ways I hadn't seen before. She described how the affair developed, the shame she carried, how she hated herself for betraying me. She admitted that after one meeting she felt so disgusted with herself she considered driving into a river. Said she didn't want to bring his scent into our home. That moment, she said, was when she realized she had to end it. But she was too afraid, too emotionally entangled. Only when she found out she was pregnant did something inside her snap. When she tried to cut ties, everything. After the hospital, the assault, the police report was a tragic result of her mistake and his violence. And yet, despite everything, despite counseling and apologies, something in me broke that day and never fully healed. When the truth finally hit her, she knew any further contact with him would only harm her and the baby. He tried to cut all ties in person, but when he reacted violently, something inside her broke. The confident, loving woman I once knew vanished. In her place was someone consumed by fear, especially around men. Except for me. At one point she couldn't even go to the bathroom at night unless I held her hand. Things changed further after our son was born. We did a paternity test and, yes, he was mine. But the more time I spent with her, the more a painful truth became clear. I didn't just dislike my wife. I despised her. I no longer saw the woman I had married. Someone shaped by another man's cruelty. And I knew I had to leave because I feared that staying might make me lose control and become someone I didn't recognize, someone like her abuser. Pleaded with me to stay, even offering a hall pass or letting me hit her if it helped me vent my anger. That was when I knew I had to walk away. During the divorce, she was surprisingly cooperative. She moved back in with her parents and we followed the court's co-parenting rules closely. 3 years later, I met my now fiancé. Completely by chance. I was in a bookstore with a friend discussing Egyptian mythology when a stunning woman gently corrected my pronunciation of a few god names. Not only was she knowledgeable, she was Egyptian herself. We exchanged numbers and that meeting turned into a relationship. When I proposed, it was in front of a peach tree I had planted years before. Dropped to one knee, but before I could finish, she ran inside and came back out with a ring of her own. She had planned to propose to me too, out of love and fear of losing me or my son. Her ring even had an engraving to my pharaoh. That night should have been one of the happiest of my life. Out of nowhere, my ex appeared, soaked from the rain, furious, shouting about how I dared propose in front of our tree, saying it symbolized the end of us. I was already emotionally drained by her ongoing harassment. Couldn't fully cut contact because of our son, but she had become a relentless source of stress for both me and my fiancé. I was unsure how to get her to finally let go without going through legal action. Something she once said haunted me. She had given time and love to a man who abused her only to end up in an even worse situation. Made me wonder if people who've been abused still crave attention from their abuser, even if they hate them. I forgot to mention that when my fiancé gave me her ring, she had already planned to propose to me, making the moment even more special. After sharing my story online, I received some impactful feedback. One user, Coffee, gave advice that resonated. They said the only proper answer to my son's birthday request should have been a firm no. They pointed out that children get over disappointment, and that there were countless ways to celebrate without putting my fiancé in an awkward position. They were right. My ex had been crossing boundaries, and I'd been allowing it for too long. If I didn't set stronger limits, I'd face more problems, maybe even 2 exes instead of 1. Thanks to another helpful comment from a user named Mama22045, I found a solution for the birthday issue. My son wanted a camping-themed party and asked for my ex to sleep over so he could recreate a scene from his favorite adventure show with both parents. I didn't want to disappoint him, but I knew it wouldn't be right for my ex to share a tent with me and my son. Even though my fiancé said she understood, I could tell she wasn't comfortable. My ex, however, clearly enjoyed the idea. She made over-the-top remarks about spending the night with her 2 favorite guys and brought enough camping gear to rival Bear Grylls. I had to intervene a few times, and she only calmed down when I threatened to invite her sister, the one she blamed for her poor choices during our marriage and whom she had refused near our son, which devastated her sister and led her into depression. Following Mama22045's advice, I bought a large multi-room tent so my fiancé could participate without sharing space with my ex. My ex wasn't thrilled but agreed. My son was ecstatic. He spent the day playing Explorer in the backyard. That night we lit a fire, roasted marshmallows, and took pictures. One point, after making s'mores with me and his mom, he handed a marshmallow to my fiancé and chose to sit with her while making another. It was a surprisingly sweet and peaceful moment, proof that something good can emerge from kiss. Later, my ex pulled me aside to talk. We went to the kitchen, where she apologized for the outburst on the day of my proposal, though not for everything afterward. She said in her heart I was still her husband, and the thought of me loving someone else was unbearable. She said she never intended to hurt me and appreciated the confirmation that I was our son's father. She believed it gave us a second chance. I thanked her for honesty, but told her clearly I was happy with my life and my partner. I wished her peace and love someday, and she reminded me of her words from our divorce, how she would wait for me. Walked out feeling drained and defeated, knowing she still hadn't let go. That night my fiancé and I slept in one part of the tent, while my ex and our son slept in another. Though exhausting and tense at times, it ended up being a wonderful birthday for my son, and for that I'm grateful.